Welcome to the Board of Commissioners Joint Workshop Meeting with the Civil Service Commission. Today is Wednesday, February 26th, 2025. It is 4:10 p.m. City Attorney, would you please do the roll call?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. I would like to open now for public comment. With no public comment, we will move into items for discussion. And I believe I'm going to hand this over to the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, Mayor, Commission, and our Civil Service Commission members as well. Thank you all for attending. This joint workshop to go over the considerable amount of work that performed by the Civil Service Commission to update the city's handbook. The item before you for the purpose of this discussion, the city's personnel policy and procedures manual. Again, after many months of review, discussion, comments, and including comments toward the end by city employees, we have before you a manual that we would be, again, just to review, to discuss and determine, but per our city charter, the Civil Service Commission prepares the manual, and upon conference or the city manager agreeing to it, it is presented to the City Board of Commissioners for eventual adoption via an ordinance that would require a first reading and public hearing and a second reading and a public hearing. Just to go over, it is a rather voluminous document, and I'm sure the Civil Service Commission will want to provide a discussion and items on it. We have before you a final document. There are two items that when we get to the particular sections that were provided to me this past week for inclusion in the manual. But pretty much we're, and with the assistance of our legal firm from Trask and Daniel and attorney Robert Eschenfelder, also in working with the Civil Service Commission, there are a considerable amount of changes on here. We do have in the packet the suggested changes from city staff over the last month of this process and incorporated into the document. At this point, again, just to go over the majority of the changes to it regarding specific processes related to actual policies relating everything from hiring to departmental rules to how we deal with just general information to everything from leaves of absence to workers' compensation, a significant number of changes. And again, we can go over in great detail, but that was really the purpose of the Civil Service Commission doing their work. But at this time, I'll turn it over to the Civil Service Commission for any comments that they would like to share.
Is this working? Okay, there we go. Jerry Cantrell, as you guys know. Nice to see everybody. We spent, correct me about the amount of time, I think it's a little over 3 years working on this before I arrived. All right, and every month we invited staff and Mr. Gomez to attend and give us feedback to make sure that we wouldn't be complicating the process for the city. And the goals of this new policy are primarily protect the city, protect the employee, and make sure that Mr. Gomez's job is not impossible to accomplish. So those are three main tasks we tried to keep in mind. A lot of discussion, I mean, really good debate discussion that had occurred. We eventually ended up adopting a version that Mr. Eschenfelder had created and did some modifications to it to meet what Madeira Beach was more accustomed to. And the version you have in front of you is what I can't remember what month it was right around the hurricane when we had finished this and we'd asked for it to move forward. And because of the hurricane, it just took a while to get it in here before you. So this has been since at least October of last year that we've been waiting to get this in front of you. So I guess what we need to ask is, what questions do you have? Because we could answer a lot of stuff that really doesn't help you any. So if you guys have questions, please let us know.
Any questions? You can go first. Oh. Is there any public comment? No public comment. Commission?
Hard to get public comment when there's no public, but.
Correct. Makes it difficult to remember you need to ask.
It does. I can't say I watch all your meetings, but I've watched some, and the level that you guys dig down into this stuff we just need to all applaud your efforts, because I'm sure it's easy to get criticism when something's changed, but I just want to thank you for all the time voluntary time that you put into this. It means a lot to the city. I can't say that I've dug down deep enough to have a lot of questions yet. You have to remember, you guys have been working on this for 3 years, and we've had a couple of days to be able to try to fit some time into it. Are there any, I see you have some of these bullet points at the front here. Is there any, what would you consider some of the biggest changes that you've made? You know, a lot of this is, you know, we've maybe changed the definition of a word, you know, that sort of thing. And that may be very important, but what are some of the biggest changes do you see that you've really made, as far as you know, I see in here different approvals from managers, and maybe how the city manager, his role, and I know one of the meetings that I watched, it had to do with, you know, the biggest thing I probably in the last year was if the city staff were to have a problem with the manager, actually referring back to the manager to figure out how to settle the issue. Where I you know, one of the meetings I watched, that was a big deal, and you actually went through several meetings on that topic. So could you make some bullet points yourself, just verbally, on some of the biggest things you accomplished on this rendition?
Mayor, Commissioners, I think Robert Eschenfelder with Trastano, I'm a labor and employment law specialist, and I work with the Civil Service Commission. And I think, you know, that y'all probably have forgotten the history. It's been so long, but, you know, several commissions back and a city manager ago, we had a workshop with the then commission, and to sort of talk about the current personnel policy. And, you know, when we came back on board to be your legal counsel, I looked at that, and it was wanting, you know, both in terms of organization and in terms of what it covered. And there were even some things in there that just weren't even constitutional. So, that's sort of where it germinated, as the commission at the time said, go fix it. You know, Civil Service Commission, attorney, go fix it. And so started down that road under the prior manager. And one of the tensions that first arose was the prior manager really resisted adopting a whole new policy, and wanted to do tweaks to the current policy. And so, you know, we expended a lot of time, unfortunately, trying to put a square peg into a round hole. That manager left the city. We got a new manager. We got a new chair of the Civil Service Commission. And, you know, folks realized, because we need to address so many things, let's just start with a fresh document. And so we started with a fresh document and sort of started all over. One of the things that came out of the last joint workshop that you had with the Civil Service Commission was, and Commissioner Tilka, you know, has had it as one of his cause celebs, I guess you could say, of the history of a termination here in the city where the several managers ago simply ignored what the Civil Service Commission had to say, and in an act that the commission at the time felt was truly unjust. And so one of the things that the Civil Service Commission wanted to accomplish, and at the joint workshop, the commission agreed on, was to beef up the ability of employees who aren't at will or otherwise exempt to be able to appeal a termination and get a truly neutral review of that termination without the manager having the power to squelch. And so at that prior workshop, what we came up with was the system of creating a hearing officer where if you are terminated and you feel that that termination was unjust, then within 10 days, you can invoke the right to a hearing officer proceeding. And you have 3 ordinances that y'all are going to adopt in conjunction. You know, one of them is the personnel policy adoption, but then there are 2 others. One revises the Civil Service Commission rules that are in place now in the code, and the third creates a new division and outlines this hearing officer process. How are they going to pick? What are their qualifications and so forth? And so in that process, you all will contract with one or a couple hearing officers. We don't have that many terminations, so, you know, it shouldn't be a very big, frequently used process. But the employee would have the right, either themselves or with an attorney's help, to go and argue to that hearing officer, and it's actually a quasi-judicial proceeding, and proceedings are taken under oath and so forth. And then that hearing officer will render an order recommending, I feel either it should be upheld, the termination, it should be reversed, or it should be upheld, but with a lesser discipline other than termination. Then the manager has the opportunity to either accept that or not. The employee has the opportunity to either accept that or not. If either side doesn't accept that, then either side has the opportunity under the new ordinance to come forward to the Civil Service Commission to appeal that recommended order. And the Civil Service Commission wouldn't hold a whole new trial. The evidence that's brought in is the evidence that's brought in, but the Civil Service Commission would sit as a review body, sort of like an appeals court, to hear the arguments of why was the hearing officer wrong, why did the hearing officer make the wrong conclusions of law, and ultimately the Civil Service Board would then enter an order, again, either finding that the termination should be upheld, the termination should be reversed, or the termination should be upheld, but or a discipline should happen, but not termination, you know, and recommend what that would be. Under your charter, the Civil Service Commission sits as an advisory body only, so ultimately the decisions will rest with the city manager whether to adopt that recommendation. But one of the things that your Civil Service Commission wanted to make sure that is put into the ordinance, and that is in the ordinance, is that a copy of that order will go to you all as the Board of Commissioners, and you'll be able to read the situation, and you'll be able to read what the Civil Service Commission thought about the situation. And if you see your manager, who only reports to you, not going the route that the Civil Service Commission wants, you guys will have a conversation with your manager to say, why are you making the decision? Again, it's the manager's the manager, and the manager runs, you know, the ship. But the process that's been put in place with a combination of these ordinances and the personnel policy certainly affords an employee a lot more fair opportunity if they feel that they've been terminated unjustly. Now, one of the subcategories of our employment is an at-will exempt director type of an employee. And so y'all are, I'm sure, familiar with the concept that for your senior management team, those folks need to be having the working relationship with the manager. And if it's not working out, even if they didn't, you know, commit a level 1 offense 3 times or whatever, it's just not working out. And a manager, a CEO, needs to be able to make those changes without going through a due process hearing. So those folks, the department heads, aren't going to have the opportunity to have the civil service appeal. But one of the things that your Civil Service Commission indicated is, look, what if a new sheriff comes to town? Like, we had a new manager some years ago, came in and took over, and that new manager could say, I'm going to put all my people in place, I'm firing all the directors. And so that's a concern because people, our directors are have built a career here. And, a lot of them are doing good things. And so we want to, their Civil Service Commission was concerned that they weren't removed just because the manager wants to start fresh or something, but instead to require that manager to try to work with those department heads and build a relationship and see what their quality is before you let them go. And so one of the things that you'll see in the ordinance is that a new manager cannot terminate a department head within 6 months of that manager taking over unless the manager finds in writing that they've committed a serious offense and let you all know what that offense is. And so while that's not a total, due process protection, civil service protection like regular employees have, at least it affords, your department has the opportunity if a new manager comes in to build that relationship. So the other major change I think that from my perspective that you see in the personnel policy is that a lot of things that simply weren't dealt with in the current personnel policy are now specifically dealt with. And, my clients over time have said, well, geez, Rob, you're giving me, 80 pages or whatever. We're kind of a small employer. And I totally hear you. But in my experience, I'm now not young anymore. You never know when something comes up. And it would be terrific that we've got a policy on that on page 62, of how to deal with this or how to deal with that. So I think that while some of the policy, may come up very rarely, at least it provides the framework for the manager and his team to manage the city. And it affords our employees greater clarity of what their roles and responsibilities and obligations and duties are. That are sort of maybe left out there. There are some things that are in the current policy that simply needed to be dealt with, like drug testing situation was overly broad, and so we've confined that. We've clarified the process of how FMLA is to occur. We've put in a employee alternative employment program where if an employee becomes disabled, the law simply doesn't require an employer to keep an employee on the books forever if they become disabled. You have to be able to perform your essential functions of your job. But with this program, the city's HR staff will try to help find, is there some other place in the city that would work out for you based upon your new physical limitations or whatnot, and get you to move into there. So those are some of the improvements, I think, that were put in place with the new policy.
Great, thank you. I actually watched some of those that was top of mind. Yeah, everything that I've seen, you guys went through this with a fine tooth comb. So if there's anything that you wanted to point out, that'd be great.
There's one other thing that we think could be considered as a major change, and that's employees in the past, please correct me, Mr. Gomez, on this if I'm not stating it correctly. Employees in the past could accumulate in unlimited hours of sick time. And then I don't know if it was once a year or when they retired or left, they were able to cash in those hours. And we felt that was not necessary. If they're sick, they need to use sick time. So, and also say like we have this problem where there wasn't maternity leave for people that need maternity leave. So we made it in here, came up to an agreement to where the employee, based upon the years they're with the system, they can hold up to twice the amount of hours they're allowed in 1 year for sick time. And there's a sick bank that's offered as well. So try to make sure all aspects are covered, but employees will no longer be able to be paid out for sick time when they leave the city. It's it's the intention of sick time is for employees to use it when they're sick, not to get a bonus check. So,
On that note, I mean, is there a maximum number of hours of PTO that you can carry over from year to year?
can you help us out with that, Mr. Eschenfelder? I know it's based upon the
there-
years they worked for the company.
We have sick leave and essentially we call vacation annual leave. So there are caps on vacation or annual leave. Don't believe there are any caps on sick leave unless I'm recollecting. There are no caps on sick leave. And as Mr. Cantrell stated, the previous process was that upon the employee's separation from the city paid 25% of the accumulated sick leave. And what's been proposed by the civil service is to eliminate. However, up until July 1 of this year, existing employees would have the opportunity to cash out 25% of their whatever sick leave balance they have. If they have 200 hours, they'd be able to receive 25% of that. Since the adoption of this, I've had numerous employees who would like that to be reinserted as part of the new policy. So go back to the previous policy that upon separation, employees would be paid 25% of whatever accumulated sick time. Cities do it a variety of different ways. Some do what's been proposed in the Civil Service Commission. Once you leave the city's employee, you're not paid out sick leave. Some cities have it that you're paid sick leave if you retire, you reach certain retirement term or period. If you can retire, for example, after working 20 years and age 55, then you can receive your sick payout, whether some cities have it at 50%, some at 100%. And again, it's just a variety in what you'd like to do. I'm getting from our employees that they would like the policy as it was to continue. And that was one of the two items that I'm mentioning to you at this workshop. And the vacation or annual are in the document, what employees can accrue. And again, the reason for limiting or capping accruals are so that cities don't have very large payouts. I've worked in cities where payouts were into the 6 digits of dollar-wise.
Right.
And I've worked in cities where they've been very controlled and the caps are low. From a financial standpoint, I mean, I agree with Mr. Cantrell. If you're sick, use the sick. Should you be allowed to accrue? That's an interesting question. Again, there are financial considerations that take into that. We're a small city. Again, our budget isn't as large as other cities, but just things to take into consideration.
Why do they have to be defined separately? Why did, you have a certain amount of sick time and you're not sick, that go into your PTO bank, but you're only allowed to carry over X amount of hours each year, which would mean you'd have to take some vacation, but it reduces the liability of the city to getting too excessive, I'll just say. You don't want to be penalized for being well, but you have to keep that in mind. Just
Well, and I think, so you have to philosophically look at what is the purpose for sick leave? What is the purpose for vacation? The purpose for vacation is we want our employees to recreate, refresh themselves, get out of here, go fishing, do whatever it is that to have a work-life balance. And so you provide, and in your policy, you have a ever graduating higher. The longer you work here, the more hours you accumulate every pay period. And so that is to let you recreate. Sick leave is because we don't want you coming in here sick because you need to be paid. But employees sometimes will come to view sick leave as a separate piggy bank that they can work towards building an extra retirement. Whenever I leave, I'm going to get paid out. And what that results in is really gaming the system. And so my advice to my clients is, even though I'm sure our employees don't want the change, I get it. It's better monetarily to get paid out. But if everybody's expecting a payout at the end of their career time here, they're not going to use that for what it is to be used for, which is I'm sick, either, I got cancer, I need treatment, or whatever the illness or disability is that they need to be off. And so I think from a philosophical, us as an employer, why do we have these two types of leave? Those are the reasons why we do. And so our employees should use them for that. And if they don't use them, it's not I'm going to get paid out at the end. There's no cap on sick. And so that is very generous in and of itself, because if you get a very serious illness that requires you to be out for a real long period of time for chemotherapy or surgery, recovery or whatnot, then you have that there and you won't lose your pay. And under the policy as it's written and proposed, even if you do run out of sick leave, you can also dip into vacation to make sure that you're paid if you have accumulated vacation. And as the chair indicated, that the proposed policy also outlines a sick leave bank, if you will, where fellow employees can donate into that and say, I want you to have my hours because I understand, you're going through a tough time. So there's a variety of ways, but, ultimately it is up to the commission of how it wants to proceed. But just to sort of share with you, the Civil Service Commission didn't make this decision out of some cruelty or whatever, but just really to try to bring it in line to, let's get back to why these leave banks exist. And, the manager will monitor these changes, and it's virtually certain that a year and a half in, we may find that this or that isn't working as we desired it or whatnot. That's what coming back and making some changes are. But after all the deliberation that we had, I think that's where the recommendation came out.
I like the idea that the sick pool and being able to accumulate the sick time. The more I think about it, you never know what life's gonna throw at you. And if you get in a reason that you really have medical expenses in a long time out, that's the last concern that you want, is now I'm not even gonna get any income. So where are we now with the policy that you're recommending?
Yeah, it's up on the screen. The recommended policy with a document as it exists right now is that there would no longer be a payout upon separation. Section B, Section 12, subsection B, notwithstanding the expiration provision subsection A, in recognition of the change in the city's prior policy of paying out 25% of sick leave upon separation, employees may request a one-time payout of 25% of accrued sick leave until July 1st, 2025, or may donate that same amount to the sick leave bank by that date.
So the sick leave bank is just something that the city holds, and if someone needs it, they.
Correct.
Okay.
Any questions?
It's commendable spending 3 years. Thank you. When I started reading through this, and it's 146 pages, so I was thinking that what prompted this board to want to make changes to the policy that was serving this town. Just because there wasn't anything here that I could compare it with. In other words, the pages are here and I read them and so forth and so on. But I really couldn't compare this with what was already in effect. And then the other thought I had, how does this policy that you have established compare with some of the other local cities? So those were the thoughts in my mind.
I think, manager, correct me if I'm wrong, but the current personnel policy is on the website.
Yes.
On the city's
Yeah,
website.
it's on the
so
city's.
You could jump out and take a look at it. It's not as long. It's very disjointed in terms of topics, how they're dealt with. eh, it just doesn't deal with as much as, like I said earlier, it doesn't deal with as much in as much detail as what this deals with. In terms of how it compares to other cities, so at least speaking for our municipal clients, they are a lot closer to this model than to what the city of Madeira Beach currently has. But that's because I work with a lot of our clients to make sure that, their policies are updated. Some of our smaller jurisdictions, like the Reddingtons or whatnot, they don't have enough employees to where FMLA applies to them. And so you wouldn't see FMLA dealt with in their policy, but most of the rest of their policy, you will see provisions very similar to what you have here.
I do believe that, our employees are the backbone of this city, and we need to be there with them and for them, support them. So whatever that makes it better for employees, I would be in favor of.
So thank you. I've watched a lot of the meetings and it's a lot of work. So thank you all very much. So I had a couple of questions. One of the things that I had when I was reading through looking for, and I realized after I read through everything that the personnel handbook doesn't directly speak to health insurance benefits provided to employees. So one of the things that I wanted for our employees was a stipend for those employees who do not take advantage of our health insurance because they're military or they are on Medicare or they have a spouse that's insured. So I wanted to talk about that today, but it's not really a topic for this meeting particularly. That's for another meeting for the commission.
No, we can
Address it for you. So we've done that. I've done that for Reddington Shores and for Seminole are the two that come to mind right away. But it only requires a resolution of the board. It's separate and apart. Some employers do put their, I call it benefits package, into their personnel policy. I advise against that, and I try to take it out when I review a policy because those things are very much in flux. You may change insurance coverages or whatnot because of new rates that come out. So typically, the best model is that package, the benefits package, is maintained by Human Resources in a separate brochure or online. Here's what we provide you. Here's your dental. Here's your life insurance and so forth. And then as that changes year over year, depending on how you all work out your budget and what you're able to afford to provide for your employees, it's an easy update, but where you don't have to do an ordinance and change your personnel policy. Your personnel policy is really, what are the rules and regulations for you as an employee that you need to follow and understand, not so much your benefits. Now, we do call out sick and vacation, but which arguably is a benefit. But the reason why we do in the personnel policy is because it's also so intertwined with the performance of your job, right?
Right.
So we need to tell you, if you're going to be using this leave, here's what you have to do, because otherwise we expect you to be here, So that's why that goes in. But if the commission decides to do that, you certainly, I can easily do that for you.
So here's my thoughts on it and why I don't know that I feel very strongly about offering the benefit to an employee who doesn't partake of insurance because I believe that we pay somewhere between $14,000 and $16,000 per employee currently
So that's the budget. Yeah.
for health insurance. And so if I'm an employee of the city and my husband has a job that insures our family and I don't need it, I'm getting no benefit and the city's essentially saving $16,000 a year because I'm not partaking of the benefit. And I don't know what the number should be that we should offer on a HSA card or as a monthly stipend. In my mind, I would think it should be a percentage of whatever we pay in health insurance to the individuals who prove that they are insured in some other manner. Because you wouldn't want me to come in and say, oh, I have insurance, so I could get the money, but I don't have insurance, right? The reason I would like it in this is because it's harder to change this employee handbook than it is a resolution. And although I support it, and if my fellow commissioners supported giving that benefit, we would all sit here and support it, and the next commission may strip that away from the employees. And I am a huge proponent of providing benefits to the employees to make Madeira Beach the place you want to come and go to work and stay, because it's not all about your hourly wage. It has to be about the culture and the benefits. And I've talked about that a lot of times, in what can we do to make our city the city somebody wants to work at. And in the aftermath of the hurricanes, I've spoken with many other cities that have lost quite a number of employees. And sometimes they're losing an employee because the city down the street offered them $2 more an hour, right? And the benefits weren't that great, so they went down the road, got a little bit more money, a lot more benefits, and I want us to have a culture that's so much better than that. So I would like to see that in the handbook, only because I would like it not to be so easy for a group of people to sit up here and take those benefits away from someone.
So my recommendation there is, if putting an extra barrier of difficulty in is, instead of doing it by resolution, you're free to do it by ordinance.
Okay,
I just wouldn't put it in the manual.
okay,
Yeah, so we could just present a separate freestanding ordinance setting up the stipend situation. I'll go ahead and share with the manager the things that I did for my other cities, and as a sort of starting point for him to take a look at it and confer with you. But whenever y'all are ready to do it,
Okay.
Mr. Trask will let me know, and I'll draft it up.
so one other thing, I say that and I'll probably come up with two. Sick leave. So does the city offer, I'm pretty sure we don't pay for it, short-term or long-term disability? We offer that as a benefit to our employees to purchase?
Not to purchase, I don't believe. We
We
offer,
give it
but we do provide short-term liability, short-term disability.
at no
excuse me.
cost to the,
Correct.
okay. So when I saw the change on the sick days, what came to mind to me is that a lot of people use sick days as their short-term disability. If you were going to be out, or in this case, I guess it could go towards long-term if we have short-term. But so if we take away, I don't know that I'm in favor of sick days just becoming 100 sick days, but how many sick days will an employee end up with per year that they can use? And would there be a way to, instead of calling it a sick day, call it a personal day? And people might be more inclined to use a personal day for a doctor's appointment or something along those lines instead of vacation? Because you do want people to take vacation and rejuvenate themselves and come back. But when you call it a sick day, if I'm not sick, but I have a doctor's appointment and I call out sick, then I'm really essentially lying because I'm not sick. I'm going for my yearly or what have you.
Well, so your Civil Service Commission dealt with that on page Roman numeral 7-9 by creating something called personal medical appointment leave, which allows you to, just what you said, I'm not sick,
Right.
but I'm going to go to my annual appointment or whatever, and you can still be paid for that. So that covers that.
I think personal days would be better than sick days. I think people would use their days instead of holding on to them. I don't think that, I mean, that's not a sticking point for me, but I don't understand, and I didn't understand it when we read it, holding on to a bunch of days, and then if you separate, you get paid out sick days. I get getting paid out vacation days. But have you,
So you get paid out PTO, you get paid out
You get paid out for your vacation or annual leave, yes, as well as,
annually or accumulated?
no, if you, upon separation from employment, you are paid the balance of your annual leave or vacation leave.
And your sick leave.
Your
No, currently, the annually vacation is 100%.
Right,
If you have 100 hours, you are paid 100 hours times your hourly rate of pay.
right.
Sick leave, currently, you are paid 25% of your balance, which
And-
could be unlimited.
So you can accumulate unlimited?
Yes, for sick leave.
What about,
Full-time employees who
Okay.
fill established positions may accumulate unlimited sick leave.
what about vacation?
The vacation, there's a schedule.
Of how much you can
That's
keep.
on page Roman numeral 7-3. There's a chart and it has a maximum accrual.
Here's the
Depending on,
chart's up on the screen.
yeah, depending on your seniority, it can go up to 400 hours.
So you can only accumulate so many days of vacation
Vacation,
time,
but
but your sick
unlimited
time
sick.
is unlimited.
That's correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's not changing?
No,
Or,
but
but what you can get paid out,
Correct.
is changing
changing.
for sick leave, correct. We would
25.
no longer.
paid
pay-
out at all.
As it sits now, we would no longer pay out sick leave upon separation. Going
Going
forward,
forward.
currently, the
But
current,
that's how I thought I
yeah,
read
the
it.
current process is 25% of accumulated hours are paid out, accumulated sick leave hours are paid out upon employee separation.
Because employees have been here, we know that we're asking for a change
Ju-
to it.
Right.
Thank you.
We wanted to assure that the employees were fairly compensated for something they understood was already occurring.
Right.
So we didn't want to just change it, say, no, you can't have it anymore. We wanted it to change so it was used more effectively, more accurately.
Okay.
But also assure that the employees that have been here still have that ability to capture what they thought they were going to get. Because it would be unfair to take that away from them. If they've been, say somebody's been here for 25 years and they've been accumulating it, and we say no, it is not fair to that employee.
Right. I agree. I do agree with that.
So, I'm sorry, I mean, that's again why cities over time have changed. You do have a cap on sick leave as well as vacation, just to advise.
So in my mind, I'm just thinking this through, and maybe I should have done a little bit more of this before the meeting, but, so I'm looking at sick leave. You know, we just went through a major storm, to just correlate. We've gone through storms before, and people have been flooded before, and they've had to deal with it. But this was a named storm. This had special benefits that we just went through with Helene. So if someone had a catastrophic illness that they were going to be out for months at a time, they already have, they're going to be taking, I just lost the word. Not the long-term leave. but the
Short-term
Oh,
disability.
short-term disability.
Disability, yeah, okay, I'm sorry. That same employee may have 300 hours of PTO or 400 hours, not 400 hours, but a lot of it, so it'll never go against that they're gonna be out. I'm just thinking it through, so they have their sick time. Do you wait till that's expired and then you have the short-term disability? Do we have any long-term disability? And for the employees that their wife has insurance and they have their health insurance with someone, do they still have the benefit of the short-term and or long-term disability?
Every employee does have short-term
So
disability.
everyone has that. So if they're out for a couple of weeks or whatever, I guess that would kick in. I don't know when it kicks
Well,
in.
I mean, keep in mind
Yeah.
that we also have to comply with the Family Medical Leave Act, which.
Yeah, no, I want everybody to be taken care of. I just don't want to duplicate.
It's not a matter of duplication. Your typical, I haven't read the city's policy, but your typical short-term and long-term disability requires that you exhaust other
Leave first.
sources of income first. So you would draw down your city sick leave until you had none left. Then you would turn to the insurance company and say, I am now uncompensated, please compensate me. Now, what the manager is referring to is that as you're being compensated under that policy, if you're within the 12 weeks of FMLA, your job would be protected. The city wouldn't fire you because you're out recovering or whatever. So there's it's a very, when you combine the short-term disability, which doesn't even kick in until after you've exhausted your sick leave, on top of your very generous sick leave accumulation, I mean, the employees get 8 hours per month. So if you're work here for a few years and don't have a major illness, you've already built up
So-
a pretty good bank.
So what the commission is suggesting is that you can accumulate all the sick leave you want. We just don't want to pay as a dividend for not using it.
Right.
Right,
Because
upon
the idea,
separation.
yeah, because the idea is that you could have, everybody wishes they have good health, but I've seen employees that have had 3, 4 months of some terrible thing, and having that cushion there
Yeah.
makes all the difference.
Absolutely, but
Right.
it sounds like they would have that between the short-term disability and whatever they've accrued, whether they've only been short-term employee or a long-term employee and accrued a lot of hours, one way or the other, they're gonna be taken care of.
Mr. Kerr, there's also the sick bank that they can contribute to, that's available through the city as well. The employees would donate hours to the sick bank, and an employee that would need has the opportunity to ask to use hours from that. So they have their hours, they have their vacation, their sick time, their vacation, and they also have the opportunity with the sick bank to pull hours from that.
Right, I mean, that's, my major concern would be that if someone gets sick, the last thing they have to worry about is their mortgage or their utilities or whatever. They're under,
Yeah, going up here.
under extreme stress, and they don't need any more stress.
No, and exactly, we don't want employees to go without pay.
Right.
Right,
And that's,
so,
adding the sick leave bank helps quite a bit.
and then if you can accumulate the PTO up to
400.
40 hours and get paid out 100% on that upon termination or retirement or whatever, you're accruing a bank, you just don't need another bank to be paid out on. I get it. I get it. I'm sure this was debated quite a bit.
Yeah.
I'm
So, I
sure.
mean, I think when I read it, I didn't clearly understand, and I mean, admittedly, because of all of the suggestions and then not understanding where they went inside the handbook, because they weren't marked that, did the suggestions roll over? Did they not? What's here, what's not there? Paying out the 25% for a maximum 25% of sick leave, I think that 8 hours a month, that's a day, that's 12 days a year that you get sick leave. So if you can accumulate as much sick leave as you want, it's fabulous. But when you leave, you can only get paid out 25% of the sick leave, correct?
That's the current
That's-
process, yes.
That's the current process. And the proposal is to not pay out 25%, to give them nothing. So if you leave, you get no sick leave. I mean,
And just to again, as I stated earlier, I did receive that as a request from employees to
Right.
leave the payout.
I'd love to understand why.
I-
I mean, I'd love to
I-
understand why. So I mean, I understand paying your vacation time. Not everybody does that, by the way. Not all
Correct.
companies do that. It's not required. So the request for the 25%, is that requesting the 25%? And if they get fired, they get 25%, or they retire, they get 25%, or they
That
just
is-
quit and go someplace else, they get 25%?
That is correct.
That's what they're wanting, 25%.
Upon separation.
So I don't personally think that if you get fired, you should get a reward. I mean, I'm just saying, I mean, I could totally understand 25% if you retired, or if you had worked for the city for, I don't know, however many years, and you were leaving for a greater opportunity, and you gave a 2-week or 30-day notice or whatever. Or, I mean, I could see where you would give that 25% conditionally. I can't see where you would give 25% to an employee who got fired because they were not performing. And that's the reason you'd get fired, right? So maybe there's a compromise there where there's stipulations on who and how you'd qualify to be able to receive the 25%, but an across the board 25% to me does not make sense. It,
That's how, but I guess.
always been.
Yeah, it's been a
Right.
benefit that's been around, I'm gonna say for years. It's been around, the current manual has been in existence since 2019.
Right.
But I'm going to infer that this benefit has been around much longer. And from my perspective, the balance of, and I think I shared with most of you, the balance of one benefit versus another and a little bit of a give and take. Not everybody sees it that way, but we
Right.
do have to have a balance. We want our employees to be as content as possible when they come into work, all things considered, be supported, well compensated, with very good benefits, be a part of the team, contribute, et cetera. At the same time, we have a fiduciary responsibility. And I will, in my career, I have seen payouts that have been exorbitant and well above reason and logic. I don't believe that has happened here,
Right.
which is very good. We do want to try to avoid that. However, it is a benefit that has existed. And we do have, we have long-term employees who have been here who do have, and the expectation of this benefit upon their separation or retirement in reality. But again, go back to what Mr. Cantrell stated, I'm calling it a compromise. The resolution was, we will provide a 25% sick leave payout between the date of adoption of second reading of ordinance, which I think Mr. Eschenfeller put as April 6th, the begin date of this manual, until July the 1st, then any employee can cash out and receive it. So if you have been here 25 years, as Mr. Cantrell said, you will not lose that benefit.
Right.
What you are losing is if you're planning to stay an additional 5 years, 5 times 12 days a year, 60 days times, so,
Right.
but that's going forward.
So you would have to apply for that 25%, or that would you'd automatically get a check of 25% of your sick leave, and you'd still have the balance of sick leave available?
It says that employees may request the payout, because there is also the option you could donate it to sick leave bank. And so if you make it automatic, that doesn't work
Okay,
out.
but let's say you had 100 hours of sick leave. If you were to take the 25% buyout, how many hours of sick
You'd-
leave do you have available? Then?
75.
75.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
And then just one other of the other, I mentioned I had 2 things. The others relating to educational reimbursement to employees, or those employees that are either obtaining a associate's, baccalaureate or bachelor's, or a graduate level degree. We currently, the manual does allow for 80% of the tuition reimbursement, and the request provided this week was to either increase that to 100% of tuition reimbursement, which again, I think a lot of cities have 100% of the cost of the tuition, again, based upon successfully passing the course. Or potentially, if the desire is to remain at 80% of the tuition, then to provide some type of stipend for the cost of books or materials. But that was the second item that was presented to me.
I would think that it would have, if we were looking to increase it over what it is now, if we were to consider that, you'd have to have a minimum time that you stayed with the city.
Yeah, and some cities have that as well. Right, if you apply,
Maybe it would be graduated based on, if you.
if you
If the
separate.
city helped you put you through school, and then you go to the city to the north because you have a better.
Right.
Yeah, You have to have a minimum amount of time, and I think that's generally done.
And is there any, do we take into any consideration when someone is going to college that well, let me start with this. This doesn't say continuing education, it says education. So we pay for bachelor's, we're not paying for someone who has an associate's and is continuing their education and getting a bachelor's. We'd pay for somebody to start an associate's degree?
No, I think we pay for someone who is looking to get a bachelor. If they already have an associate's, they want
No,
to.
if that's not I'm sorry, Robin.
Yeah, no, that's good.
So if I come to work here and I have no college and I want to go get an associate's degree, I'm not continuing my education, I'm starting my college
Okay, I
education.
see what you're.
Will the city pay for me to
Think
get
we-
an associate's?
I believe we have, I don't remember if we've
So
had incidents, but yeah, we currently do that. That's
So
in the
do
policy.
we pay, or do we stipulate that whatever education they are getting relates to the city and a city job? Or do we
Yes.
let someone just go get
No,
any type
yes,
of?
it's
It
in
has to
this,
be related?
Page XXI-1, professional development.
So,
And it says reimbursement shall be limited to courses which are required as part of an overall academic program leading to a degree related to the employee's current city position. And it specifically excludes remedial courses and doctoral dissertations.
Really?
I think if you pay 100%, then the employee has no investment.
That's exactly, when I was going over this list
Yeah,
with Ms. Powers, I said, that typically the employer wants the employee to have some skin in the game.
Right.
And so paying that 20% is your commitment to this. And we're covering 80% of your tuition.
And
I agree.
just, does your grade level have anything to do with,
Yeah,
with
it
it?
does. They have to pass the class.
You
The class, don't
You have to pass.
have to
Yeah.
pass.
Pass with a D?
You have to pass.
Just pass, fail, you get a trophy.
So there are, I mean, I've worked
No,
in.
it is. So,
Yeah, I think it
so,
stipulates your.
it says, tuition reimbursement conditions. Reimbursement for college tuition is discretionary benefit and shall always be subject to available funds from the Board of Commissioners. Approval of a specific reimbursement request is the sole discretion of Human Resources, who must weigh all relevant facts and policies in granting or denying. Reimbursement is further conditioned on the award of a C grade or pass-fail in pass-fail courses. So D or an F won't get it.
And we already have that at 80%, is that correct?
Yes.
Would the classes be taken during the business hours or evenings?
It's not time worked. Yeah, this is on your own personal time.
And typically, schools accept their tuition, the fees in the beginning. So what if a person basically pays the fees and then they fail, at the end of their course? Would they have to they reimburse the city that money, or?
No, it's a
No,
tuition
it's a
reimbursement program. So you get your C or B or A, and then you bring it and say, city reimburse
I
me
see.
for, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the employee pays for the cost of the tuition, fees and materials up front. And then upon successfully C, B, or A, then we reimburse the cost of the tuition.
And the commission's not recommending to change it, is that correct? It was just brought up as something
Yes.
from staff, or not, that's been brought up through the manager, city manager. Okay.
I think in terms of added time benefit, I know that the commission's add of maternity leave, paternity leave is new and layered on top. So that's a whole another leave bank. And then I think there was 2 or 3 new between holidays.
Yeah,
And
2 new vacation days.
It's the floating holiday?
No, the
Or the-
the floating holidays remain the same. It's
Yeah.
just 2 additional city holidays. And I think I shared with you the President's Day in February and Juneteenth on June the 19th, which we currently are open.
But you have to come into work the Monday after Super Bowl.
Yes, that is still not a holiday, the Monday after.
I would have asked for that to be a holiday if I was.
It's where we have personal,
Sounds like sick leave.
vacation, no.
Now, will,
Yep.
will we be, when are we voting on this? Is this like a?
It's on the workshop, after this meeting, your regular commission workshop, and then the first reading and public hearing will be at the March 12th, commission regular meeting, and then second reading would be the meeting on April 8th or 9th. I should look at the calendar.
May I ask, with the work that we had done, we were gonna get that you had asked for, we outsourced the,
Oh, the compensations too.
right. Your microphone's not on. Have you received that back yet?
No, that
I've not received that back yet. That's still, Mr. Gomez is probably able to give the best reports on that at this point, because they're still doing a
There's-
lot of their
yeah, there's-
survey.
It's still ongoing, and we'll bring you an update at the March workshop.
Because that part of that goes into the whole concept of buying
Oh,
out
yeah.
their sick leave.
There'll be a lot
Well,
more
yeah.
suggestions of spending money once that.
Right, well, that's what I'm concerned about, yeah. Okay, all right, thank you.
Well, that'll all part of the budget, so when we'll have the
Right,
first
but we're-
budget discussion.
But this
yeah.
is part of the budget too.
Yes, absolutely.
I have no more questions.
Anything more? Anything more you'd like to share?
I think we're good, Mayor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for all you do.
Yep,
Anything?
thank you again to the Civil Service Commission and Mr. Eschenfelder, and then certainly city staff and in my office, Megan Powers, for her coordinating all of this as well. Thank you, Megan.
If we're done, it is 5:12 and we are adjourned.